again, we'd like to is necessary. How easily get hurt. The second thing here in verse 5, notice charity, or in verse 5, yet charity thinketh no evil. Charity thinketh no evil. I believe what that means is that love is contrary to a critical and judgmental spirit. Today, sadly, in order to be a Baptist, you have to possess a critical and judgmental spirit. That's how many people think. But love is contrary to a critical and judgmental spirit. A critical, fault-finding spirit will always be a disruptive force in a body of Christ. The love of God in the heart does not allow one to have a fault-finding, disparaging spirit. And there are those who are absolutely obsessed with the sins and with the faults of others. But this love of God in the heart does not allow such. You think about a critical spirit. I've known many people with a critical spirit. They're never pleased. They're never pleased. A critical spirit is never pleased. A critical spirit expects and finds disappointment wherever it looks. Wherever it looks. It is the opposite of what we read here in 1 Corinthians 13. In other words, a critical spirit is not long-suffering. A critical spirit is not kind. A critical spirit is puffed up. A critical spirit does not behave seemly. A critical spirit seeks its own. A critical spirit is very easily provoked. So it's the opposite of everything we read here in 1 Corinthians 13. But charity thinketh no evil. But a fault-finding, critical spirit very arrogantly judges, is easily provoked, and accounts for every wrong that it sees or supposes or imagines, and again, it cannot be pleased. That spirit not only damages the critiqued, it damages the critic as well. But the love of God in the heart is prone to, instead of a critical spirit, is prone to put the best possible construction on the motives and the conduct of others. Someone who does not have love, they're always suspicious. They're always suspicious of what others do. But the love of God in the heart does not think evil of another based upon mere hearsay. I want you to know, and I'm sure you do, that someone can say anything about you, horrible things, and I promise you, there will be those who believe it right away. They'll believe it right away. In fact, they're anxious to believe it. That's not love. That's not what love does. Love does not think evil based upon mere hearsay. The love of God in the heart does not immediately put a bad construction upon the acts and the acts of others without indisputable facts. I mean, facts can't be denied, but you don't just believe something about somebody without fact. Well, they're a good source. No, that doesn't work. Love does not think evil. It does not seek opportunities to find fault and be critical. I've known individuals, and you'll have an awful hard time convincing me otherwise, that the only reason they came to church was to find fault and to be critical. It's the only reason they come. Love won't do that. Love is fearful of judging unrighteously. Notice in Matthew chapter 7, a very well-known passage, verses 1 through 5. We're not going to say much about it. One day we'll preach upon it. But Matthew 7, Jesus speaking says, "Judge not, that you be not judged." And that has to be taken in the context. "For with what judgment ye judge, ye shall be judged. And with what measure ye mete, it shall be measured to you again. And why beholdest thou the mote that is in thy brother's eye, but considerest not the beam that is in thine own eye? Or how wilt thou say to thy brother, Let me pull out the mote out of thine eye? Behold, the beam is in thine own eye." They want to fix you, but they can't, because they got a beam in their eye. "Thou hypocrite, first cast out the beam of thine own eye, and then thou shalt see clearly to cast out the mote out of thy brother's eye." What's being prohibited here is not the casting of all judgment, but what is being prohibited here is unrighteous judgment, unfair judgment, proceeding from a wrong spirit, proceeding from a wrong attitude. We're not to judge unrighteously. Love is fearful of judging unrighteously. Being criticized goes with the territory of leadership. That's true. It doesn't matter whether it be a pastor, you can be a manager of a company, it doesn't matter. It goes with the territory. You're going to be criticized. What one person takes delight in, the other person criticizes. It just goes, it's part of the territory. But far worse than being criticized is developing a critical spirit. That's worse than being criticized. A body of Christ should be free of a critical spirit. That is just looking for fault, just looking for reasons to get angry, just looking for reasons to get offended, believing everything you hear about somebody. Notice in Romans chapter 14, Romans 14, verse 10. "But why dost thou judge thy brother? Or why dost thou set at naught thy brother? For we shall all stand before the judgment seat of Christ. For it is written, As I live, saith the Lord, every knee shall bow to me, and every tongue shall confess to God. So then every one of us shall give account of himself to God. Let us not therefore, because of the judgment seat, judge one another any more, but judge this rather, that no man put a stumbling block or an occasion to fall in his brother's way." So again, personal examination is necessary. What do I look for in people? The good or the bad? What do we look for? How quick am I to see the bad? How quick am I to see and believe bad in others? And when we look at other people, what do we dwell upon? Do we dwell upon the good, or do we dwell upon the bad? Love thinketh not evil. Then notice in verse 6, charity rejoiceth not in iniquity. Love does not find delight in the sins and faults of others. Why is it that if someone sins, if someone falls, that's going to spread very quickly? Very quickly. Somebody does something right, that may take a while, if it ever spreads. It's because of a lack of love. The news of someone sinning, the news of someone falling, spreads because people delight in it. They love it. They love it. It makes them feel good. At least I haven't done that. But that's not love. That's not love. And I promise you, if any one of us tonight were to fall into sin and ruin our testimony, there would be people who would delight in it. But you can mark it down. Those people do not love you, because love doesn't do that. A fault-finding, critical spirit, the intention is to tear down and to destroy. So that fault-finding, critical spirit rejoices in iniquity. It rejoices when individuals fall. Those who find delight in the sins and faults of others will always be a disruptive force in a body of Christ. Throughout the description of love here in 1 Corinthians 13, Paul basically is stating that the love of God in the heart is opposed to all wickedness and evil practices, and that it tends to righteousness in practice. So it's obvious that the love of God in the heart would never find pleasure, would never find delight when others fall into sin, even if it's your enemy. You should not find delight in their fall. If it's someone who has done you wrong, love will not allow you to delight in their sin and in their fall. The love of God in the heart finds no pleasure when others fall into sin, nor does it find any pleasure about hearing of others fall into sin. People love to hear that stuff. They love to hear that brother so-and-so did such and such, sister so-and-so did such and such. They love that stuff. But you can mark it down. They do not have the love of God in their heart. They do not have this love in the heart. The love of God in the heart finds no pleasure. And even it finds no pleasure in hearing of someone sinning. And even if the sin is proved, love finds no pleasure whatsoever in it. Wickedness finds a malicious pleasure in the report that someone has fallen into sin. But the love of God in the heart will not do that. The love of God in the heart neither loves the wrong nor loves the fact that it's been done. The love of God in the heart causes one to be greatly grieved and burdened over the sins and faults of others. Notice in Psalm 119, verse 158. Psalm 119, verse 158. I beheld the transgressors and was grieved, because they kept not thy word. I beheld the transgressors and was grieved. Ezekiel chapter 9, verse 4. Ezekiel 9, verse 4. And the Lord said unto him, Go through the midst of the city, through the midst of Jerusalem, set a mark upon the foreheads of the men that sigh and that cry for all the abominations that be done in the midst thereof. And notice verse 5, and to the others he said in mine hearing, Go ye after him through the city and smite. That is, those who do not sigh and grieve over the abominations. Let not your eye spare, neither have ye pity. He's talking about God's judgment. 2 Peter 2, verse 8, we'll not turn there, but we see that Lot vexed his righteous soul over the sins of Sodom and Gomorrah. Love grieves when one falls in the sin. The love of God in the heart not only prevents one from finding pleasure in the sins and the faults of others, but it causes us to rejoice at the restoration of others. There are people that get mad when someone's restored. That upsets them. There's something terribly wrong with that. Love does not do that. So how do I respond when others fall? We see here in verse 6 also, charity rejoiceth in the truth. The word truth stands opposed to iniquity. So these two go together. In other words, love finds pleasure and delight in the virtue of others. There are people who will hate you. I'm not talking about the lost world. Well, I kind of am, but I'm talking about those who profess to be saved that will hate you for doing right. Love doesn't do that. Love finds pleasure and delight in the virtue of others. Love is pleased. Love has great joy when someone does right. Notice in 2 John, verse 4. 2 John, verse 4. I rejoice greatly that I found of thy children walking in truth. I rejoice greatly. That gives great joy if we have love in our hearts. It's wickedness that causes one to be jealous over the virtue of someone else or feel threatened by the virtue of others. And may I say, a child of God should never be ridiculed, degraded, shunned, and persecuted by other children of God for doing what's right. But that happens in churches. You expect that to happen in the world. But you shouldn't expect that in the house of God, where a child of God is ridiculed and shunned for doing what's right and for standing by their convictions. Love will not allow that to happen. The love of God in the heart will rejoice in the godliness of others. So again, personal examination. What is my response to the godliness of others? Then notice verse 7. Charity beareth all things. Charity beareth all things. The word beareth here is the Greek word stego. It means to cover. It means to conceal with silence. Love is disposed to conceal the faults of others. This is what is being spoken of. Notice in Proverbs chapter 10, verse 12. Proverbs 10, verse 12. Hatred stirreth up strife, but love covereth all sins. 1 Peter 4, verse 8. 1 Peter 4, verse 8. And above all things have fervent charity among yourselves, for charity shall cover the multitude of sins. The love of God in the heart is more ready to cover faults than to reveal them. Now there's times in a body of Christ, sin needs to be revealed for the sake of the body. But that's not what this is talking about. What we're talking about now is that love is more ready to cover than to reveal. Again, someone hears something. Can't wait to text someone. Can't wait to get the news out. Love doesn't do that. Love would rather conceal than to reveal. And if we do have to reveal, it should greatly burden us and sadden us. But the tendency of love is to cover. So love is the remedy for the desire of talebearing, the malicious communication of secrets. It'll take care of the problem of whispering and slander. The love of God in the heart will remedy the desire of revealing the sins for the purpose of destroying someone. Even if a sin needs to be revealed, and you need to exercise wisdom when that's the case. What is our desire? What is our purpose in revealing the sin? It should never be to destroy someone. Love does not seek to destroy someone. The inclination of love, again, is to conceal rather than reveal the faults of others. Charity beareth all things. It's also disposed to carry the burdens of others. So we have to ask ourselves, am I more inclined to conceal or reveal the faults of others? Sometimes people will ask us things about other people. We could do much damage if we said what we knew. Well, what's the point? What's the purpose? What's your purpose in doing that? Is it to destroy someone? Does it need to be said? Does it need to be revealed? Again, love is more prone to conceal than to reveal. It goes on in verse 7 and says, charity believeth all things. I believe what that means is that love is disposed to put the best interpretation upon the conduct of those loved. It does not mean that the one who loves makes no discrimination in regard to things to be believed, or that he or she is prone to believe a falsehood has the truth, that he makes no effort to inquire what is true and what is false. It says that you believe everything. The one who is under the influence of love chooses to put the best construction upon the motives and the behavior of others until they know otherwise. And hearsay isn't knowing otherwise. They put love is prone to put the best construction upon the motives and behavior of others. There's people you can do good things for them, and they're going to question your motives because they have no love of God in their hearts. It's wickedness and hatred that is quick to believe the worst in others. It's a mark of human nature. We're more quick to believe the worst than the good. Love doesn't do that. Love will remedy that. Those who are prone to distrustful and suspicious, to a suspicious spirit, these people will always be a disruptive force in a body of Christ. But the love of God in the heart prevents a distrustful and always suspicious spirit of others. So again, personal examination is necessary. How do I respond when I hear an unfavorable report about someone? Do I believe them right away without any examination whatsoever? You know, sometimes examination isn't even necessary. You don't even need to proceed any further. Just drop it. Just drop it. Just leave it alone. Verse 7, charity hopeth all things. Love desires good for others. Love wants what is best for others. And when appearances are not right concerning the conduct of others, it is the inclination of love to hope that all matters may be explained and made clear. You hear something bad about someone. Love hopes it's not true. Love hopes that's not so. But many times people get so excited, off they go. But love hopes what I've heard is not so. So that one's conduct may prove to be pure. So again, personal examination. When I hear the sinful conduct of others, do I hope what I have heard is false? Or do I start getting excited? Oh man, I got something to talk about now. Love won't do that. Love always hopes for the best. Verse 7 also says, charity endureth all things. Love endures. We've already looked at love suffereth long, so this is something different than that. I believe it speaks of the lasting and abiding nature of love. In other words, love is not here one day and gone the next. Love is not overthrown by that which opposes it. It's stronger than death. The waters and the floods cannot drown it. Song of Solomon, chapter 8, verse 7. The love of God in the heart has sustaining power, has resisting power. Love is able. Love is willing to undergo, to go through, to experience, to encounter, to withstand trials and testings and afflictions. It endures. Again, how enduring am I when it comes to the behavior of others? He goes on in verse 8 and he says, love or charity never faileth. This speaks of the value of love. Love may fail as to the exercise of it. Love may be left. The fervor of love may be lost. Love may wax cold. Love may be much obstructed. But as to its principle, as to what it does, it never faileth. It never faileth. What that means is that all the characteristics that we've looked at here in verses 4 through 8, they're all true of love. They never fail. This love is long-suffering. It is kind. It is not jealous. It does not act, it does not feel superior. It acts appropriately. It is not selfish. It is not easily provoked. It is opposed to a critical and fault-finding spirit. It does not find pleasure in the faults and sins of others. It delights in godly virtues of others. Its tendency is to conceal the faults of others and to carry the burdens of others and disposed to believe the best of others and desires good for others and has an tremendous enduring capability. Love never faileth. In other words, where there is love, these things will be present as well. When a body of Christ is saturated with this love, that's a special place. That's a special place. Wherever this love is, it can be in a home. That home becomes a special place. But every body of Christ ought to be saturated with this love. And it becomes a very special place. Again, we're talking about the church to which God has added us to. And it ought to be a special place of love. The child of God is to pursue, is to manifest, is to express this love of God. Notice 1 Corinthians 14, verse 1. Follow after charity. Pursue it. Pursue it. It's not a pursuit of being loved, it's a pursuit of loving. We are to pursue this kind of love. We ought to want this kind of love. This is above all spiritual gifts. If you were to be asked if you could have anything spiritually, what would it be? It ought to be this, love. Follow after charity. Pursue it earnestly. Notice in Hebrews 13. Hebrews 13, verse 1. Let brotherly love continue. It's to be pursued. It's to be continued. Hebrews 10, verse 24. Hebrews 10, verse 24, let us consider one another to provoke unto love and to good works. It is to be pursued. It is to be continued. We are to provoke it in one another. How do you do that? The best way to do so is by example. The best way to provoke love is to be loving. That's the best way. There's no better way. So be loving one toward another, provoking love one toward another. This love should be manifest in our deeds. Notice in 1 Thessalonians 1, verse 3. 1 Thessalonians chapter 1. And verse 3. Remembering without ceasing your work of faith and labor of love. Labor of love. You read the same thing in Hebrews 6:10. A labor of love. A body of Christ should be absolutely saturated with a labor of love, first toward the Lord, and then toward one another. A labor of love. Being a God-added member of a body of Christ involves a very special love relationship. Every church, from time to time, is accused of being unloving. Usually, the people that make that accusation are some of the most unloving people on the planet. But if we are accused, and we will be, and we have been, of being unloving, we do need to make examination. Are we unloving? You see, some people have a warped view of love. If you don't approve of my sin, if you don't have a parade for my sin, you're unloving. Well, they have a different definition than we do. All we can do is keep on loving them. But what we read here, notice in 1 Thessalonians 3, verse 12, and the Lord make you to increase. Paul's talking to the church of Thessalonica. The Lord make you to increase and abound in love one toward another within the body of Christ at Thessalonica and toward all men. So now it goes outside of the body. But notice here, increase. That is, grow. Our love ought to grow. To what degree? Increase and abound. Overflow in love one toward another and toward all men. The growth of love that is being spoken of here is to the degree of abounding. We're to love one another. We're to grow in that love to the degree of abounding, where it just overflows. It overflows the faults of one another. It overflows the shortcomings. It just overflows. Increase and abound. Again, a body of Christ should be a place of growing love for the Lord and growing and abounding love for one another. And then it is to extend outside of the body of Christ. And remember, two different standards for our love within this body and our love for our neighbors. Our neighbors we're to love as ourselves. The members of the body of Christ as Christ loved us. Big difference. Big difference. So that this would really, truly be a relationship of love. That's what every body of Christ ought to be. But what I see happening today, it's been going on for a while, is people have more love for members of other bodies of Christ than they do the body in which God has added them. That's a dangerous ground because you don't want to promote them to be unloving toward others. But your first responsibility is to the body of which God has added you, and there ought to be a closeness there that doesn't exist anywhere else. There are people who will share with those outside of the church and will not share with those within the church. There's something terribly wrong with that. This ought to be a special place of a love relationship. So God help us to grow until we abound in love one toward another. Brother Ben, if you'd come and lead us